the 23C new fee. So I need to start again. Yeah, so good morning and good
Yes.
afternoon. So today is the last session for our series of 23C new features, and today's topic is about database security. So database security, as we know, so this is about me. So I'm working with senior product manager with the database product management team. My email address is there. You can reach us. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Uh, and if you have any questions with any projects, yeah, we can work with you. So as a PTS team, we work with all the partners, and our primary goal is to get their application certified over uh, 23C and autonomous databases to be specific, right? So any questions, any problems, anything that you need to discuss or want to do a POC, want to get your application certified, PTS team is the one you can reach us. So you have my email address, you can note it down, or you can connect to me on linkedin.com also. So this is safe harbor statement. We will be talking, it just mentions that we are going to talk about certain features. These things cannot be a liability. It is general concept that we are talking. Your decision should not be based on just the information on the presentation. You need to dig deep into the topic before implementing. Okay, so Oracle 23C, before this, the most popular long-term version is 19C. Most of the production databases now are in 19C since 21C came out of support. And in fact, 19C is also for a few years only. It's already in extended support now for next 3 years. So after 19C, we had Oracle 21C, which was an innovation release and not really suitable for production use. And probably that is the reason you might have heard of it, but not used it in your premise. So we in 21C itself, we added some new features and those features plus some additional 300 enhancements, uh, including that are something that are bundled in the 23C. So 23C has a lot new things to offer you and use, right? So 23C is more defined as an app service database. It is more suitable for or optimized for application development environment. Um, and we also project it as a converged database option, right? So uh, it is, even though it is a most popular RDBMS database, now we can do much more in 23C. Like we can have JSON database, graph, microservices, and other developer productivity things that are there. And of course, the security is also part of it. Beyond this, all those new features like vector search, graph, and select AI or generative AI are also being included in 23C, right? So it's kind of a future-ready version now we have, right? Coming to our topic, database security is very important, right? Something that we cannot forgo. And I see that most of the participants today are also DBAs. There are few managers also there. And I'm pretty sure that all those managers are also having some DBA background, right? So uh, so they very well know the challenges that a DBA faces, right? So the one of the primary goal is to protect the data and database access, right? To do that. So data needs to be protected at multiple layers, right? Like who can access, what they can access, and how from where they can access, right? And of course, we can also add how they can access, right? So the data has data to protect data. Generally in database, we may not keep it in encrypt way, but we want to authenticate a person who can access to my database, what all things he or she can access, and from where he or she can access. Moreover, that we also have a concept called encryption at rest and encryption at during transit of data, right? So that is the key area, right? A people person, if even if he cannot access the database, they can sniff the network and pick up the network traffic and read what is being transferred over the net, right? So the first step is to secure the connection on the network, right? So right from Oracle 7, we had this network encryption and a database auditing feature which was added, and later we kept adding to it, like say 9i, we had fine grain auditing, virtual private databases in 8i, and then we have audit vault, firewalls, right? Database firewall, and then we added data masking, subsetting, and in 12c, we added unified auditing and online encryption migration, right? So then we have key vaults to store and manage your certificates and keys, and so on, right? So, and then comes to 21c, we have this Azure connectivity, like supporting uh, external authentication using Azure OAuth wallet, right? So, and we will discuss what's new in 23c part also, right? So what we are going to discuss today more are these features. Because there are so many topics, we will restrict today's session to a few marquee features which are very popular and more useful to you, and you can start using it immediately even when you install a database for your purpose, right? So it starts with developer role. This is a new role that we have added to simplify DBA work, and the work between the developer and DBAs, right? And then we have schema privileges. It simplifies how we give access to objects in other schemas. And the new network encryption layer, the TLS 1.3 support is the latest one that we have now, industry standard. And the Azure OAD, right, Active Directory using open authentication integration, right? So Uh, along with that, we will also look at the new feature of SQL Firewall. This is a very beautiful feature, my favorite, I will say. Something that can prevent you from attacks that we get, right? Like SQL injection attacks and unauthorized access, like session hijacking and other things. So these are very difficult to do, and using an external tool uh, is again questionable, right? Because it is again external to the database. This is within database and much more secure and cannot be interfered. And then we have longer password support. We will see that. So earlier we had passwords with size of 30 bytes. Now we support more than that. This is more useful for multi-byte uh, languages that we have, right? So, and then the new audit feature, right? So the unified auditing. So this editing is, I'll say not new. It is started in 12c, and yeah. Okay, so let's jump into the section. So the first one is the developer role. This is a new role that we have added to you to the database that you can use to assign privileges to developer team, right? So generally there is a conflict between DBAs and developer team, right? As what level of access they need, and because of auditing and security standards, we cannot give access. Every access needs to be authorized. Change request might be needed if it is production. And if it is like, if you have given certain accesses in development, you need to migrate that to database in production, right? So this becomes easy. It becomes difficult to manage, right? Generally, what happens is we end up giving DBA level privileges to developers in the development environment, and then it becomes difficult to migrate it to production, because in production we cannot do. So when you migrate the code, it fails, right? So for this reason, we have introduced DB underscore developer underscore role. This is a new role which by default has 80 or 280 plus distinct privileges that a developer would require for any development activities, right? So it will cover everything, right from access, like say, create connect privilege, to create tables, debug tables, look at the statistics, and tune, which helps to tune their applications, right? So developer role is DB underscore developer underscore role, right? We'll see. So it becomes easy. So for us to grant a role to a user, just with one command, grant role DB underscore developer underscore role to develop the user, and we can revoke it with one role, right? So you may feel that, okay, I could have done. Many DBAs who follow the best practices, they also create a role, because you can create manually role. But then the question comes is, when you change anything, you need to track that role, right? It's not default. And whenever you go with upgrade or anything, there may be new things that are added, right? So this role, as I said earlier, contains all the privileges that might require for an application developer, right? It includes system privileges, object privileges, and predefined roles, right? So you can check what are the roles which are part of, what are the privileges which are part of DB developer role using this select privileges from role underscore sys privs. And you can see that it has all that you might require, right? Right from create session to create table, create trigger, uh, and also like if you are doing analytics, so create analytical view, create cube, create dimensions, cube dimensions, and the new one that we have is create domain, right? So we can do create job, and then we have something for transaction management, for debugging, and others, right? In addition to that, we also have access to the $v parameter, so that the developer can access the parameter settings, and the statistics of the database, right? So how their application or their query is performing, right? Kind of thing. So this is one where like DBA once gives the privilege to developer, his life becomes much easier. They don't have to bother every day for new access or information that developer team may need. So in addition, we also have grants like soda underscore app, which is required for documents. Like I said, like we now support JSON document, JSON duality views and all. So if you are creating an application which uses documents data type, right, or JSON documents and all, so you may require this. Okay, and also we have CTX app view, which CTX APP role, which helps you uh, create text-based indexes on your schema, right? So that was the role part. The next part is the schema privileges, right? So we all know that uh, how we give privileges is we have system privileges, then we have object privileges, right? So a user will have user level privileges, right, on system or on an object, right? A user who has some objects, he will have all the privileges, and he or she can grant those privileges to other, right? This is the basics that we follow in our database, right? So we do this. So the Scott, now it becomes easy for us with this command. We'll see this. So now, schema privileges, when we used to give, no, when a user creates an object and works within schema, it is much easier to work, right? He or she has all the grants on all the objects that they create, right? They just need some system level privileges like table space they can write on to connect to the schema and the create whatever type of objects they need, right? Those are privileges, system privileges that we talk of, right? Uh, Apart from this, like if we generally like have multiple schemas which are used in application, and there may be multiple applications which are connecting to the same database, trying to access multiple schemas, right? So in such scenarios, one schema needs to grant access to the other schema objects, right? And this becomes pretty complex for us to manage, right? So in generally development environment, it is much easy to give system privilege like select any table. But when you give select any table, it is like a system-wide grant, right? That means he or she can access any table in the database, right? Which may not serve our purpose, right? We may want to give specific to specific schema, specific tables, right? So till now, what we used to do, we used to grant per object, like I can do select, insert, update on XYZ table in an ABC schema, right? So to avoid that, we may do like create role, etc. But then it is much easier now because now I can give a grant at a schema level also, right? So this is an example that shows how we used to do, right? Earlier we used to do select all on schema name and object name to the user, right? And you see, depending upon the number of objects that are available in that schema, we need to manage that, right? Moreover, that like in future, like because we say, right, the application is constantly changing. We may add a patch, we may add an object, we may change a column to that object or whatever, right? So if a new object is created, you need to go back and give grants to all those users who needs to have access to it, right? So this becomes a simple with you give that grant, like say for select any table on schema. So you no longer have to give select any table, which is a system privilege on entire database, right? So this is more secure and easy to maintain and audit also now. Makes life much easier for DBAs, right? Especially in a multi schema environment, right? Okay, so the next part is about the encryption. So here we are more talking about data during the transit, right? When a client connects to server, uh, other than the user authentication, uh, the client should know that I'm connecting to the right server, and server should know that I'm connecting to a reliable client, right? So this may generally like many DBAs don't have to go deep into this area because their application and database is sitting in a data center on probably server next to each other, secured by firewall and everything around them. So as long as they set up the network connection set up the SQL.NET or a net listener and have a strong password that fulfills, right? But with changing time, right, we are not restricted to one data center, right? And the database might be accessed across data centers or across, say, in a multi-cloud environment between the cloud and this, right? Even within a data center, having encryption ensures that nobody is trying to sniff the data out of over the network, right? So for this, we have with 23C, we are now supporting TLS 1.3, which is an industry approved standards. So this is so we are going more aligned with the industries, right? Not just depending upon the native Oracle encryption, right? So something that we started with 7 onwards, right? We started with the native encryption there. So TLS 1.2 is if you are on 19C, you probably are using TLS 1.2. Earlier versions were TLS 1.0 and 1.1. So TLS 1.0 and 1.2 are deprecated with 23C. Um, and you have to use TLS 1.3, right? So TLS 1.3, TLS, if you are not familiar, it is the transport layer security that is referred as TLS. It's an industry standard and it uses a PKI certificate. This is PKI X509 certificate to establish symmetric keys, right? And yeah, so you need to have a certificate format, certificate for this, and the certificate will have the identity information and user authentication information also, right? So, and TLS, before TLS, we were using like OpenSSL, right? So OpenSSL somewhere, I think SSL 3.0 onwards got converted to TLS 1.0 or 3.1, something like that, right? So, yeah. So it is very much similar to that, right? So as we know, when as a DBA, we create a listener and we configure a SQL.NET.ora, SQLnet.ora file, where we make entries about what kind of protocols networking we are going to use, right? We define SQLnet.ora parameters there, right? So why this is because from a database user perspective, Oracle wants to make it the encryption protocol independent kind of connection so that as the technology progresses, we can change the underlying encryption mechanism that is being used, or we give a choice to user to whatever they want to use, right? So for example, currently like we have Oracle native encryption available as well as TLS, right? So it's a choice available for you to use that. Uh, yeah, TLS is new and it is an industry-wide thing. So Oracle is also pushing to get compliant, right? To this. This is, you can see the use cases here. It is more required for government agencies who don't depend on the vendor native things, right? They want some industry standard or their own standards, right? So same is the case with most of the commercial large organizations, right? They don't want to get locked to a particular vendor. Right. So so as we said, there are two types. So we have basically two layers, right? So we have transparent network layer, and then below we will have the protocol that is being used, right? So generally the bottommost layer is TCP/S, that we use, right? That encrypts, that shows that we are using a secured connection and an encrypted connection, right? So we have an option to use native encryption, uh, TNS, NNE, or TLS, right? So yeah, uh, so TLS, yeah, we need to decide like which level we want to work on, whether we want to use native Oracle encryption or we want to go with the industry. Most of the time, it is not actually our choice. It is what our organization policy dictates, right? So if you choose to use TLS, no, it always requires you to have a signed certificate, right? Because in TLS, uh, uh, yeah, in TLS, we basically authenticate not just the user but also the devices, right? So the server needs to be recognized and the client also needs to be recognized. So this is done using a signed certificate. So again, the signed certificate generally is issued by a competent authority, signing authority, or what we refer as CA or certified authority. It's a CA trust certificate that we get. You have to, of course, pay for that service. And what they give you is a signed certificate. Using that certificate, you can create your keys, right? So yeah, this is a commercial part. You have to pay for this. If you are generally like in production, where we have a public level access, we do this. It is the same certificate if you have used for configuring it on your web server, like for HTTPS, we use the same certificate, right? The root certificate is same for that. So if you are using that, you already have a certificate with you that you can use. And it works pretty similar way, right? So the other option is you can use a self-signed certificate, right, to use this, right? When it comes to TLS, we have option to use TLS or MTLS, right? So the difference between these two is when you're using MTLS, you need to have certificate both at client and server end, right? So based on that certificate, the client is recognized and server recognizes the client, and then they exchange and define a key to be used for encryption the data, right? So, but yes, this requires that you need to have access to deploy the keys or certificate, generally, which is like a wallet for us. Uh, so you need to deploy wallet at every client end, right? So, but if in case you have like hundreds of users, right, or hundreds of places from where your database is accessed, you may not have access to all those things, and you may not want to give wallet to every person because wallet can be like copied and taken everywhere, right? So the other option is to use simple TLS. So in this case, we do configure only the server end, and we don't need any wallet on the client end, right? But this comes with a limitation because you cannot just allow any client to connect to your database, right? So there will be certain restrictions like the client has to be identified from the point where they are accessed, like being in the same subnet, or your IP address is whitelisted there. Right. So this is a small diagram how the encryption works. So if you are not encrypting data, you you open SQL plus, connect to database, you run a select statement, your uh, username, password is mentioned in clear text. So anybody who is sniffing your network and reading the packets will be able to catch your credentials as well as the data that is being transferred, right? So which is a risky part. So the best way is to encrypt the data in transit. right? So for this, we need to have an encryption key. So when we introduced the native encryption, how it works, it's pretty easy to set up, right? That is why it is more popular, and it has been there for pretty long time, right? So most of the DBS, they do it, and those who have done OCP certification knows the details of it, right? So it is easy, it is popular. We just need to set some parameters, mainly into the SQL.NET, SQLnet.Aura and Business, right? And mention that in TNS side, right? Which defines the network connection, right? So in this case, what happens is there is no certificate involved, right? So we are depending upon the native encryption. So when a connection is request is sent, the client and the server internally communicates and decides on a asymmetric key, right, or asymmetric key, and they will use that key to encrypt all the data for that session, right, for that connection, right. So that is what it happens. This is a default mechanism if you are using on-premise or you are using base database service uh, in cloud, or even on XRCS or XRCC, right? So this is a default thing that we have. The other part is that you can use to encrypt you can use MTLS, right? This is more secure because not only that you're encrypting, you're also identifying that I'm connecting to the right server, and the server also knows that I'm connecting to, passing the data to a authorized client, right? So it's not that somebody can use another machine and start using it, right? So the access points are also recognized in this case. So this is achieved by having a wallet on both the sides, server side as well as on the client side. And those wallets will have the keys that will be exchanged to recognize or identify the resource that we are getting connected to, right? So the kind of certificate that we use are the PKI certificates, right? Uh, it uses a strong encryption algorithm, right? So yeah. And we discussed, right, that for TLS, for MTLS, we need to have wallet on both the sides, right? But if you are not having access to the client side, or to make it simple, you have option that you put certificate only on the server side. So that is generally the TLS configuration, right? So we have MTLS and we have TLS. So this was introduced in 12C itself, 12C R2. We have started supporting MTLS, right? It requires a wallet to be there. And if you have created autonomous database, you remember, right? We go to the connections tab and download the wallet, and we use that wallet from SQL Plus or SQL Developer to connect to the autonomous database, and we use that wallet on the client end where from where our application is accessing, right? So there is a wallet within the database, and we have given the wallet that can be deployed on the client end. So if you are using autonomous database, MTLS is the default mechanism that is being used. You have an option to change it to TLS, but then you need to define the subnets and all those restrictions that are needed, right? Generally, like we restrict it to a private subnet that only the clients coming from this particular subnet can connect to the database, or no, we have whitelisted the IP addresses from where the user can connect to. Yeah, I don't see any questions till now. Okay. Now coming to the self-signed certificate, the certificate that we talk of in wallet, right? So we have two options. One is we use a commercially available certificate, right, which is generally like issued by an authority like DigiServe or VeriSign kind of thing, or we use a self-signed certificate, right? So there is always an advantage to use commercially available. So many people or many organizations for the production, they will use a commercial self-signed certificate, and for development, they use the simple. Sorry, for production, they use commercial certificate, and for development environment or test environment, they use the self-signed certificate, right? Just to minimize the cost, right? So if you are using a self-signed certificate, you can use tools like Aura PKI to create the certificates and all it needed. Sorry. Okay, so here this is an example how a certificate is created and deployed in this, right? So to create a certificate, right? We go to any certifying authority like VeriSign or DigiCert or kind of thing, and we create a request, right? A signing request, right? So during signing request, it's basically a form that we fill. We provide all the information, that is the domain name and other identification needed for identifying our organization, right? So the certifying authority will verify those credentials, and then they will issue a root certificate. So we get a root certificate, which we use to create whatever signing that we need to do, right? And then we use that signed certificate to create a wallet, keep it in that, and then use it for connection, right? So we can now have option to put it on the server side, and we can create a client wallet also, right? So once we have a signed certificate, we can use it for both database side encryption as well as for the listener side also, right? So no need for separate this. You have options to use separate, but basically not needed. So once this is there, right? Now when you have a client, right? We we configure the wallet on the client side. So the wallet will have a trust store where we have the information to identify the server, and same way the server will be able to recognize the the client by exchanging the certificates, right? So we know that we are communicating between two trusted parties here. And once that is done, they will negotiate on a symmetric key using which the ongoing traffic will be encrypted, right? So that's how it works. Okay, any questions so far? Um, at least I am not able to see any questions. Okay, that's good. So. Okay, the next feature is about Azure Active Directory authentication using OpenAuth. So O authentication for first time, I'll say. Wherever there is O, we directly infer it as Oracle, right? But yeah, here it is Open Authentication 2 protocol that we use, right? This is more useful because no, the Oracle unlike other major vendors, Oracle came up with this concept of multi-cloud environment, right? And we have a pretty good backing with and collaboration with Microsoft, right? So now you can actually create Oracle databases in Azure, right? And same way, we can allocate, use Azure Active Directory to authenticate, create externally authenticated users in database. Right. So there are two different projects, more referred as two sister projects for external authentication. All right. So it is, one is using the OCI Active Directory service, or IAM service, right? Uh, and the other one is Microsoft Azure Active Directory. So this is based on your preference. You can use this, right? So the more advantage of using this is from DBA perspective, you don't have to manage users. You just have to manage roles and assign those roles, and you can do it in centrally, right, at one place, right? So this is the most important part of it, that all that authentication is done through an Active Directory, right? So you are working at one place. It is managed centrally, right? So whenever a user comes, we have to just, his user ID will be created in the directory, right? And we just give him access to by using roles. And most important part is we don't have to worry about user raising a ticket to reset their password, right? So they can reset the password at their, like, uh, so the simplest to use that we say, right? So yeah, so no more I forgot my password kind of tickets that we need. And the second part is most of the policies in organizations, they require their application passwords to be circulated, changed every periodic, right? Maybe every 6 months or every year or every quarter, right? So in this case, it becomes much easier because we are changing at one place. It is affected, and we don't have to redo the same part at every application end or and the server end, right? Moreover, when a user leaves the organization, if his account is deactivated at the Active Directory level, naturally he will not have, he or she will not have access to any of the resources on the database, right? So you don't have to worry about uh, somebody leaving the organization and DBA not knowing about that so and so XYZ person has left the organization, and the chances of his account being used by somebody else is avoided, right, or prevented, right? So so this is how it happens, right? So we can have this. So yeah. So this is more useful with the multi-cloud thing, or if you are using a lot of Microsoft tools, right, which use Active Directory, because in many places Active Directory is the primary, Azure or Microsoft Active Directory is kind of the primary user management tool, right? Which is used for not just OS authentication, your everything, right? System, your HR system, everything will have access based on that, right? So just for Oracle databases, going with the different doesn't make sense. Now you can use the common one there. It works with the autonomous, all database offerings that we have on cloud, right from autonomous shared, autonomous dedicated, base DBCS, base database, and Exadata on cloud services also, right? So this is what we say. So it is not just that we create a user and map it to a schema. That can be done, right? I create, but that is useful for personal schema, right? So if as a Rajiv, as a user, as a DBA or as a developer, if I have an account on a database, I will have a schema for me, right? So as long as I'm accessing my own schema, it is fine. But generally, we will the developer will not be interested, right? Developer will be more working on the object related to the applications, right? Which will be in a different schema, right? So what we do is we create a user in AD and we create a schema and we map the user to schema, as well as we create an application role and map the user to that role also, right? So all the grants that we give are based on the role rather than to directly to the user in this case, right? So user needs to be mapped only for the initial authentication, like who can access the database. And the next question is what all he can access or what all he can do, right? So that comes from the roles that we assign, right? So it becomes easier, like, I may join as a DBA, so I will have DBA privileges, but then I get promoted as a manager. And as a manager, even though I may be managing the whole team of DBAs, but since I am not supposed to log in and resolve tickets, my access needs to be removed, right? So we will just remove myself from the DBA role, app role from there, right? So it becomes so simple for us. So we can have global roles to do, which roles basically we are talking of AD groups in this case, right? So, so here is the syntax. So we generally create user, right? With syntax, create user, username identified by password, right? So here, because we are identifying it outside, identified externally, we say as identified globally in this case, right? So same way, we create role which is identified globally, like that is where it is mapped to a AD role in the application, right? So when we are using identity and access management, that is in OCI, we will give the OCI name, Active Directory name here, like IAM group name and the Active Directory that identity and access management, that service that we have created. And when we are creating with Azure directory, it will be like Azure underscore role is equal to the role that we need and the group app group that we have created, right? This is how we create a user which is authenticated externally using an Active Directory or identity and access management. It's pretty simple to use. So how does it work? In this case, basically, when you add a user to a group and all, right? So basically, a token is created, and then the token is assigned to the schema, right? So here you can see the token is created and is associated with the schema or a role, right? Same way, when a user connects, it creates a token and uses the token to connect to this. Now, for Oracle Identity and Access Management, it is pretty simple. We are working in an Oracle environment. We are using that. But in case we are using a multi-cloud environment, or we are also using lot of applications like Power BI, which is a very popular tool, or SQL Server also may be there, SQL Server reporting, and they are using Microsoft Active Directory or Azure Active Directory as the latest one on Azure Cloud. So we can integrate that with our database so that our Power BI tool, the user can use his own identity to connect to Power BI as well as connect to the database, right? So the management becomes much easier in this case. Sorry. So to deploy this Azure OAuth, we basically use something called ODP.NET, or this is called Oracle Data Provider for .NET, right? So there are two types. One is a fully managed and an unmanaged ODP net. I'm also not pretty expert into what is the difference between these two. Only thing I understand is ODP.NET fully managed is completely designed in .NET, and unmanaged is like partially designed in .NET as well as in C++ kind of thing, right? Oracle provides a native Microsoft installer, which you just run it on your machine, Windows machine or there, and it deploys the ODP that you need, right there. So the installer can do both managed as well as unmanaged ODP net, right? So this can be used to connect to any of the other services. We can use it to connect to Oracle database as well as to the other services, right? Okay, so below is the URL which you can access, where you can access the ODP.NET native installer. Okay, so that all was for the Azure .NET. Uh, uh, the next part is my favorite, that is SQL Firewall. So this is pretty tricky, right? So these days the hacking is happening, and especially if you are a public facing thing like an online shopping or a banking application, right? Your customers or end users are always outside your network, right? In an ERP kind of environment, most of the users are within a network. If you can secure the network, you can have that sense of security. But if it is public, like you have already given an entry point outside to the outside world, right? And that is where the hackers take advantage of, right? So they may try to mimic the customer, and they may do a SQL session hijacking, and then using an active session, they may start using SQL injection techniques to query the database and retrieve information apart from what general application accesses, right? So to prevent this, Oracle has now introduced SQL Firewall. This is an in-database feature. So everything is within the database, not outside. There is no configuration outside or no part or service outside, right? So if your database is working, that is working, right? So there is no dependency on outside. So what it does, it basically recognizes the SQL, whether it is something a normal SQL or an unusual SQL, right? If imagine you have an online application or a banking application, your application may be making millions of queries, right? But those are kind of a fixed queries, just changing the bind variables, right? Like which user, which account number, uh, what product kind of thing, right? But the SQL will be pretty simple. When you are running existing defined reports, the SQL will be pretty standard, right? But if somebody comes and tries to access something else, the SQL will be very different, right? So the SQL firewall can recognize those SQLs and stop it, right? So you define the rules. You can block, or you can log that. You can block and log that SQL so that you will know that yes, somebody tried to make a attempt, and no, something extra has been retrieved, or so there was an attempt to retrieve XYZ information, right? So that is the advantage that we get. So we can block, and we can also log that for our auditing purpose, right? So for this, our firewall, to know whether this is a reliable or accepted SQL, we need to make it learn, right? So what we do is we run it in a sandbox, like the way we do it in a test environment, right? We run it for certain period in a closed monitoring environment where users are allowed. The application is working as normal, and we start logging the SQLs that are getting logged, right? So once we are sure that we have logged enough and we have almost covered the entire activities that an application can perform, plus whatever that internal thing that we need to do. And we can enable the use that data to with the SQL firewall to start monitoring, right? Uh, so it is within database, so it is like a library cache kind of thing, right? So it does not have to store the entire SQL. It will keep the, what I assume is the way the query plans are used. We have a hash value, so SQLs are recognized based on hash values, right? And so so that is very efficient way, right? Instead of a long SQL, you are just having the hash value, and no, it does not have much or zero, near zero performance overhead on this. So there is no lag that you will see in terms of response time. But yes, if you are trying to run an unauthorized non-standard SQL query, probably you will be blocked by that, right? Not probably, you will be blocked. Sorry for that. Okay, so the next is the longer passwords. So the first thing that we have is longer the password, more secure it is, because most of the brute force algorithms, right? They keep trying multiple combination. If just the combinations are more, it will take more time and may not be viable for them to make attempt, right? So that's the logic behind it. Unless somebody is trying to capture your password and copy it, that's a different case. But yeah, most of the hackers, they try to use that brute force, trying to recognize or identify the password, right? By using different combinations, right? So till now we had a limit of 30 bytes for passwords, right? Which means that we can have a password maximum up to 7 to 8 characters, especially when you're using a multi-byte character set, right? So the bytes are longer, right? So in a multi-byte character set. So the total number of characters, because the same character uses more than one byte, 30 byte will limit the number of characters you can give for password. So in 2023c, we have increased this limit to 1024 bytes. That means we can have a kind of a passwords which are like a sentence long, uh, more, right? So instead of just putting your past girlfriend's name as password, now you can put an incidence that relates to that, right? Instead of just a name, which is easy to identify. Yeah, that's just a joke. Okay, so the benefits are for autonomous databases requires a longer password. Yeah, that is one thing. OCI passwords can be up to 100 characters long now. And if you are using any US government kind of thing, most of the other governments also follow this. So they require 64 character password. So that is where it is helpful. If you are using clients, existing clients, they need to be patched to support this. Then that is one part. Okay, so we have come to almost end. This is the last part of it. A few slides more. So this is about the auditing. So auditing is one more thing, right? So whenever we talk of security, first we put the restrictions and controls and on in place. And the second part is we need to ensure those controls are in proper place, right? They are effective, right? It's not that somebody has disabled a control, right? So that can be done using an audit policy, right? So now we can focus on auditing sensitive data rather than and narrow it down so that it has less performance overhead. And you know, so we generally say that you create a rule that can be implemented, right, in a normal life, right? So if a government creates a rule which it cannot implement, then people will not follow. It will create more chaos in the society. Same way, if you create an audit and start auditing every activity that is happening on database, you may not be able to uh, investigate or the looking at what went wrong becomes more tedious, right? So it is always advisable to narrow down your auditing to the most crucial part of it so that you don't miss out on the details, right? So auditing, it was introduced in Oracle 7, right? The native Oracle auditing. Uh, uh, and it was deprecated in 19C because in 12C, we introduced a new concept called unified auditing. And in 23C, we are discontinuing, we are making it absolute for the normal auditing that we used to use. Now we are following only the unified auditing, right? So traditional audit policies will still work if you are upgrading the databases, right? And also that is just to reduce your workload on that part. So what is new in unified auditing policy is now you can audit based on the column specific policies, right? Not just on the table or insert operation on a particular table or a select operation on a particular table. You may want to audit a select operation or a update operation on a specific table, right? So that narrows down your auditing definition drastically, and you don't end up logging junk, right? So you have a smaller data set to investigate when you start investigating or monitoring. Right, so below, this is the diagram that how it works, and below is the SQL syntax. How do you create those audit policies, right, in unified auditing? So here we are creating audit policy for employee PII access, and what is we are selecting, we are auditing the select actions on column salary and employee name in Scott employee table in Scott schema. Right. So, okay, so that brings us to the end. Let's see any questions so far. Yeah, I don't see any questions. There are some questions which have already been answered. Thanks, Mahesh and Satya, for that. Yeah, so I think we overshot the time again. Sorry for that. But yes, if you, we still have few minutes to, if you have any questions. Thanks, Army, for the nice comment. And good to know that you found this series interesting. We may do certain more sessions in probably in February again. On the new features like vector search and so generative AI, which are there. So yeah, that are also being, we started discussing on it, and you can expect notification again soon, sometime in Jan or Feb, right?
Rajit,
There is a
there are a
question
couple
for
of
Omkar.
questions in Q&A box.
It's good. So Omar has a question. DB developer role is assigned to a user can access to all schema. No, it is not for access to all schema. DB role is mostly for your own schema, right? So anything to other schemas, you have to explicitly grant on that schema. So by default, when you create a user, you get grants only on your schema, right? That's what it gives. So another question is, how does this new security feature impact database backup and dump? No, this does not impact in any way. It's same as what we are using before. Can we get more deep drive on security? Yes, you can drop us a mail. I mentioned my email address. with your specific questions that you have, or in case there is any special requirement for you, for your organization or your project. Yeah, we can do that part of it. I still see one hand raised. Do you want me to unmute and you want to discuss that?
Hey, hi Rajiv.
Hi.
So I have the question was DB role. So instead, syntax is given that granting access to that particular user grant DB role to escort. So escort must be the user who wants to log in, right?
Yes.
So where the access is that? For which schema it is?
So only for the Scott scheme.
So that is escort was for whom?
No, no. So Omkar, you remember when you create a user, any user, so
Hmm.
you need to assign a role or assign a privileges to connect that particular user to your database, right?
Right,
You will assign as grant a create session to username,
right, right.
create something to username, right? So those are the basic privileges that you need to grant it to the user at the first level. So that is not required now. So you just grant that but this particular developer role to that user, and it will have the certain privileges access to that particular role. Yeah.
Okay,
For
that
accessing that, yeah, for accessing one particular schema, you need to give the schema privileges to that particular user.
okay. So I'm not getting this now. How is it
Yeah,
beneficial in
Raju, if
that?
you can show the
Yeah.
So for
slide
example, can I?
where
Yeah, so if you remember, like when we create a user, we create user no, only using create user, username identified by a password, right? Uh, that does create a user in the database, but you cannot log into database unless we give you connect create session privileges, right? So once you
Yes.
have connect and create session privileges, you can connect to database, but you cannot create any object, right? You need to have create table object, right? So general practice is we give uh, create session, connect, comma resource privilege. Now, when you give resource privilege, it is a pretty higher level privilege, which entirely gives you more access to your schema, right? You can do almost anything on your schema, right? Which
Right.
is not a best practice again, right? So we want to allow user to do certain things which we want, right? So like create table, create view, create stored procedure, etc., right? To create view, index, and all, right? So that part, instead of giving resource and connect separately, you can just mention one role to the user. So instead
Okay.
of assigning any grants directly to user, that is avoided. So
I understood now. The thing is that you're saying that if the schema is clear, you were creating so many of you earlier you're granting so many access. Now you have to just grant this and the user log in their schema and can create an object whatever has been assigned as a
correct,
developer.
in their schema, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
For cross schema, you have to explicitly give, like, so we have like, so if you have
Uh,
an application schema and your schema as a developer, uh, you need to have access to all the objects on the application schema, right? Then you can use the grant any, select any table on that schema. That's the new privilege that we have at, which is applicable at schema level.
that's very late, but we came, this should have been done long back. Yeah.
Yeah, this was something like was demanded. Every DBA felt that even when I worked, I used to feel why it is so difficult for Oracle to give that kind of role. But yeah, finally we have that now.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So
And
there is
in
one more
case of
question.
questions in there.
Yeah, the security features are availability with Oracle Enterprise Edition. Is that correct? Does it need advanced? Yeah, the most of the security features that we spoke of are part of the package. There is no additional thing needed. How is 23C SQL firewall different from database firewall different? Mahesh, you want to take that question?
Yeah, so Chan, this is the native feature of security, database security, additional feature of database security, wherein in SQL firewall, you just have to record from where your connection is coming from. So there is a separate package called DBMS underscore firewall, SQL firewall. You can use it and you can capture the connection or the context of the connection from where it is coming from. It captures the underlying OS username. It captures the IP address from where your connection is coming from to your database, and also it is capturing the type of OS that or the type of application that you are using to connect to the database. Like in some cases, you may be connecting your database through SQL Plus or SQL PLSQL Developer or any other third-party tool. So all those information, the user context is being captured. Once the capture is completed, you stop the capture and you create the allow list. So based on the whatever has been captured till now will be recorded and the allow list will be created. And then once this allow list is implemented on the database, and if you're trying to connect the database from any different IP address or from the OS user or from the different OS client, you'll not be allowed to access to your database. So that's the basic functionality of the SQL firewall. Um, Database firewall is completely different from the SQL firewall, actually. I hope I could answer. If you need any further drill down security uh, deep dive session for the security, database 23 security, we will do that. But this SQL firewall is natively available with the 23C database, comes with the database itself. In addition to that, you can see this SQL firewall on the data safe. If you are using the data safe for your auditing purpose, database auditing. So the SQL violations, rules, policies can be defined on the SQL on the data safe UI. Yeah, so Omkar, as of now, the enterprise edition of 23C database is available on OCI, and there is a 23C developer release is available. You can use, so all those features are available in the enterprise edition as well as the developer release for the on-premise. But the edition-wise segregation of the feature is not yet. I mean, we don't have any information on that. We will come to you very recently, which will be available. But as per my gut feeling, all the features are available throughout the edition, across edition. Yeah, and there is no separate options required to buy to enable all this feature. So like earlier, we used to have the enterprise edition and buy separate option like advanced security, in that you would be able to encrypt your database and so on, right? So in this case, there is no as of now there is no any segregation is available as of now. I mean, we don't have that information.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I
You
think
can
there's
say
someone
now.
is raising the hand. Yeah.
Yeah, this is Nisa here. I just want to clarify more on this SQL firewall.
Uh-huh.
Two questions on that. One is whether it's a schema level or on the database level. And second question is, how does it impact if I export and import into different platform? Because I understand SQL captures the OS and the IP addresses, everything while while it is processed. But the moment I export and then import into different platform, how does it
Mhm.
impact?
Okay, so you're saying that
So
if you're exporting into the different platform, the same setting will be exported into the dump files.
No, it depends on what you're exporting. So if you're
Exporting.
exporting a particular schema, right, then only the schema is exported, right? If you import the schema, there is no firewall. You have to enable the firewall on the other end where you're importing the database. Now,
So if I export the schema, the SQL firewall details will be exported along with that?
no, not along with that. You have to do it separately.
By default?
So not by default. You have to do it
Okay.
manually.
So in case if I need to specify explicitly there,
Mhm.
and then if I explicitly specify and then import it,
Correct.
then suppose I am exporting from
So Mahesh,
RHL 8 to 9 and import it into a 9, where 9 has a different platform or different OS user, then whether the import still works, or do I need to disable the SQL firewall on the target?
This I think we need to check.
no, I did
this
not
yeah.
get the question. Yeah, it seems to be complicated. So
Yeah.
is it possible for you to define the problem and send it over a mail?
You want me to give some analogy on this?
Yeah, if you can.
Okay, we have a database in RHL 8, okay, say DB1, okay, and then we have schema called schema 1, and I exported the
No,
DB1.
your RHL, you are referring to Red Hat Linux 8,
Red Hat
right?
Linux. Because if
Okay.
I understand, the SQL firewall keep tracks of the OS and OS user and OS detail also, right? So that it can allow or not allow. Correct?
Correct.
Mhm.
So now from that platform, I import into a different platform, which OS user is different. Okay, and the platform also is different. Right? Instead of RHL 8, it is RHL 9. Then
Okay.
how does this firewall metadata? Because I'm importing the SQL firewall metadata also.
Correct. So in this case, it will not affect because here the SQL firewall is more designed to identify SQL query rather than which user, right? So the rules that are set, the SQL firewall we are using to identify authorized SQL and unauthorized SQL, right? The primary focus is that.
but the
Whereas
moment
which user is we configure data safe and other database firewall and all, right? So that, so
okay,
as
because
long
I'm
as
just sorry, just for my understanding, clarity.
yeah.
The moment I import into a target, right, the first query will be considered as it coming from different IP as a different OS user. So that it will allow or not.
No, that depends on the configuration setting, right? So I said that the SQL firewall is focused on what is authorized SQL, right? So for say, if you say that select, I have a authorized SQL which says that select employee name, comma salary from employee table, right? In HR, right? Under HR schema. So this is a authorized SQL query, right? But if somebody tries to fire a SQL query, they are saying that select employee name, comma date from employee table in HR schema, which is not part of your set of authorized SQL query, then that SQL query will be blocked, right? So when I'm trying to export these rules, I'm exporting the authorized set of SQL queries rules, passing on to the other database, right? So that I don't have to relearn or recapture authorized SQL queries.
So if I understand correctly, as long as the query is allowed, it will allow irrespective of whether which IP it is coming.
Yeah, that is the focus is about on the SQL query authorization, right? Which user can do is a different set of rules, right? That needs to be managed separately. But maximum, like say, when you define SQL queries, the user level authentication and what a particular user can access is minimum very less rather than the authorized SQL queries, right? The authorized SQL queries can be almost infinite, because depending upon the size of your application. So what kind of reports being generated, what columns, what tables are being accessed, right? You may not want certain columns to be accessed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that was good that we had so many questions. That shows, gives confidence to us also. Yeah, if you have any further requirement or specific questions, you can do send us a mail. I'm putting my mail address in chat also for you to copy. And um,
Okay, thank you everyone. And Mahesh and Satya and Rajiv, if you have any comment to finalize the DB23c new feature series, please let us know.
yeah,
And if you
so
want to do
yeah,
have
this
any
was a
highlight.
good experience for us also, and good to see one nice comment from the participant. Yeah, we may add some additional sessions sometime in January or February for the new features like vector search and AI vector search and generative AI features, right? So yeah, please watch out for that.
Right. Thank you. Mahesh, do you have any
Yeah,
comment?
yeah. As Rajiv said, it was a great experience to talking to you guys. So especially with the partners like you, we are encouraging you come up with us. I mean, you send us your requirement. We are encouraging you to certify your application on 23C. For that purpose, if you need any help from our side, you can directly reach out to us. Uh, we will help you out that. And I would I would I would recommend that you very quickly you certify your application on 23C, because there are lots of the new features we have introduced from every part of functionality, like be it as a performance, security, manageability, and accommodating the various types of workload. So yearly you can enjoy with this feature, and you can make your application very robust, very advanced. And as Rajiv said, we are coming up with the new series, which will be different than this. So wherein we will be addressing more advanced feature. So these were the basic features, but and we have introduced some 300 plus new features in this 23C. So it was not possible to cover each and everything, but um, almost we had to cover most of the feature in this. Yeah, stay tuned with us, and subscribe to
Yep.
the advanced series as well.
Thank you so much, Mahesh.
Okay, maybe one more points I would like to add here. So, it's been a journey. Like, if you see Oracle from 11 to 4 to 12C, 19C, and 23C, Oracle uses a lot of features, but apparently, many of the partners are, or many of the customers are really not using all the features. So, if you're part of such kind of session, please explore this feature by yourself. And if you have any queries, you can reach out to us. It's not like if I have a use case, then only I need to explore. And for the learning, exploring the things, you can do it. And we're really missing such kind of things from partners communities. Okay. And second thing is that so these features are not built today. There's been a lot of research, a lot of effort put it by our developer. Okay, so explore it. If you feel there is some kind of improvement is required, you also can suggest that. If there is a bug, you can highlight that. Okay, we'll definitely try to make it improvise in our next releases also. Yeah, that's it.
Correct. We ran a comprehensive beta program of our partners to validate or evaluate on hand beforehand before the general release, right? Currently we have 23c available only on the base database on OCI. We are still awaiting release on on-premise and autonomous and other platforms. So, but if you want, you can still join the beta program if you want to test the on-premise 23c version for this. So, yeah. And apart from this, do check up our Oracle Live Lab site. There are a lot of live labs specific to individual features, especially for like SQL Firewall. There are live labs available. Please try it out so that you get the hands-on experience of using it and other things.
Yeah, one more thing I just wanted to add. This series was completely for the APAC partners. Whoever want to have the one-to-one briefing session, please let us know so that we can reach out to you individually and have the detailed session with you. So do send us the request or the mail.
Yeah, Jay has shared the live lab link also. You can explore that.